In the warm, gentle breezes of 1950s Hawaii, a young boy named Robert lived a life that was both simple and complex. The sun would rise over the mountains, casting a golden light on the turquoise water. For Robert, every day was an adventure, a chance to explore the lush green islands with his best friend Mike. But Robert's world was not just one of beaches and sunshine. He lived between two very different worlds, shaped by two very different men. He had two fathers. One was my own, a kind and intelligent man. The other was my dad, a man who saw the world in a way few others did. Both men loved Robert deeply, but their advice, their beliefs, and their dreams for him were worlds apart. One father was a man of books and classrooms. He was a highly educated schoolteacher, a respected leader in the community. He believed in the power of a good education, a steady job, and a life of service. He was what many would call a good man, a pillar of society. This was Robert's poor dad, not poor in spirit or in love, but poor in his understanding of money. He worked tirelessly for his family, yet financial struggles were a constant shadow in their home. He taught Robert to study hard, get good grades, and find a secure job with a good company. His path was one of safety, of following the rules, and of working for a paycheck. On the other side of Robert's life was his rich dad. He was Mike's father, a man who had not finished school but was building a business empire. He was not a man of fancy degrees, but of street smarts and financial intelligence. He saw opportunities where others saw risk. He believed that true education happened not in a classroom, but in the real world. He taught Robert and Mike about business, about investing, and about how money truly works. His lessons were not from a textbook. They were from life itself. He encouraged the boys to think differently, to challenge conventional wisdom, and to learn how to create wealth, not just earn a wage. And so, young Robert stood at a crossroads. Even as a child, he would listen to one father speak of the importance of a pension and job security. Then he would listen to the other speak of assets and financial freedom. It was confusing. It was fascinating. One father represented the life that society told him to want. The other represented a life that seemed almost like a secret, a hidden path to a different kind of success. This was the beginning of his journey. A journey not just through the beautiful landscapes of Hawaii, but through the complex and often misunderstood world of money. It was a journey that would define the rest of his life. Robert's own father, his poor dad, was a man of great principle and dedication. His life was a testament to the values he held dear: hard work, academic achievement, and loyalty to an employer. He would often sit with Robert at the kitchen table, surrounded by books, and say, "Son, the key to a good life is to get a great education. Study hard, get top grades, and you can get a safe, secure job with good benefits." For him, this was the formula for success, a reliable map that had been passed down through generations. He truly believed that this path was the best way to protect his family and provide for them, ensuring they had everything they needed. Every morning, poor dad would put on his crisp shirt and tie and head off to his job as a high-ranking official in the education system. He was proud of his work, and he found great meaning in shaping the minds of the next generation. However, despite his important position and his tireless efforts, money was always a source of stress. Bills would pile up on the same kitchen table where he gave his heartfelt advice. "I just can't seem to get ahead. If only I got that raise." Robert saw the worry in his father's eyes. He saw a man who followed all the rules, but was still trapped in a cycle of earning and spending, a race he could never seem to win. The advice from poor dad was always consistent and came from a place of deep love. "Money is not that important. Love what you do, and the money will follow." He also warned him against taking financial risks, viewing the world of business and investing as a dangerous game best left to others. "Our home is our biggest investment." He taught Robert to be an excellent employee, to climb the corporate ladder, and to rely on a company for security. His worldview was built on the foundation of trading time for money, a fair and honorable exchange in his eyes. Robert loved his poor dad immensely. He respected his intelligence, his integrity, and his commitment to his family. He saw the goodness in his father's heart and the sincerity in his advice. Yet, he also saw the struggle. He saw the frustration of a brilliant man who worked harder than anyone he knew, but was constantly anxious about finances. It was a painful contradiction. Why did someone so smart, who did everything right, have so much trouble with money? This question began to grow in Robert's young mind, planting a seed of curiosity that would push him to seek answers beyond the world his loving father knew. In stark contrast to the academic world of his poor dad, Robert found a different kind of classroom in the company of his rich dad. This was a world of action, not theory. My lessons aren't delivered in quiet libraries, boys. They happen in bustling offices, at construction sites, and sometimes over a meal where I'll draw a diagram on a napkin. He didn't have a PhD, but he had a deep understanding of the language of money. His school was the school of life, and his curriculum was built on financial literacy. He believed that the most important subject, how money works, was not taught in schools, and he made it his mission to teach it to Robert and his own son, Mike. While your dad says, "The love of money is the root of all evil," I'll tell you, the lack of money is the root of all evil. Money is a tool, boys, a form of power that can be used for good, to create opportunities and to build a life of freedom. So what should we do, Dad? Don't say, "I can't afford it." Instead, ask, "How can I afford it?" That's how you open your mind to possibilities. This simple shift in language changed everything. It transformed a statement of limitation into a question of possibility, forcing their minds to think, to solve problems, and to find creative solutions. His teaching method was practical and hands-on. He didn't just talk about business, he showed them business. Let me show you the difference between an asset and a liability. An asset is something that puts money in your pocket. A liability is something that takes money out of your pocket. Spend your life acquiring assets, not liabilities. While poor dad saw their family home as their greatest asset, rich dad explained that because it took money out of their pocket every month for the mortgage, taxes, and upkeep, it was actually a liability. This idea was revolutionary and went against everything Robert had ever been taught. The core of Rich Dad's philosophy was to challenge the conventional path. He saw the rat race, the endless cycle of working for money to pay bills, as a trap set by a lack of financial education. The rich don't work for money. They have their money work for them. This was the central secret he wanted the boys to understand. It wasn't about being greedy. It was about being smart. It was about learning the rules of a game that his poor dad didn't even know he was playing. For Robert, these lessons were like discovering a secret map to a hidden treasure, a treasure called financial freedom. One sunny Saturday morning, Robert and Mike decided they wanted to make money. They went to Rich Dad and asked for a job, expecting, maybe a simple task or two. But they were surprised by his offer. "I'll hire you to work in one of my small convenience stores for 3 hours every Saturday. The pay? 10 cents an hour." Even in the 1950s, this was an incredibly low wage. The boys were disappointed, but they were determined to prove themselves, so they agreed. Our first job was not glamorous at all. We were tasked with dusting the canned goods on the shelves. It was just so tedious and repetitive. It felt like it would never end. Yeah, for weeks we showed up every Saturday and dusted the same cans, shelf after shelf. That little wage of 30 cents at the end of our shift felt almost, insulting. I started to feel frustrated and angry. I felt used. This wasn't what I imagined when I wanted to learn how to get rich. He complained to his poor dad, who was outraged. "He's violating child labor laws. You should demand a raise. If he doesn't give it to you, you should quit." This was the advice of a good employee. Stand up for your rights and demand fair pay. But Robert remembered Rich Dad's lessons about thinking differently. So he and Mike decided to talk to Rich Dad. Not to demand a raise, but to understand. They found him sitting on his porch, and Robert finally let his frustration pour out. "You're exploiting us. This is a terrible deal." Rich Dad listened calmly, a small smile playing on his lips. When Robert was finished, he spoke. "Good. You are finally getting angry. Most people just accept their small paycheck and never question it. Or they quit and look for another job, thinking a new job is the solution. You are starting to learn." He explained that the job itself wasn't the lesson. The feeling of frustration was. "This experience is your first real lesson. I want you to feel what it's like to work for money." Most people spend their lives feeling this way. They are driven by two emotions, fear and greed. Fear of not having money makes them work hard. Then when they get their paycheck, greed makes them think of all the things they can buy. The pattern is set. Get up, go to work, pay bills. Their lives are run by that paycheck. He then fired them, telling them the real lesson was about to begin. After firing them from their 10-cent an hour job, Rich Dad made the boys a new offer. "I want you to keep working at the store for the same 3 hours every Saturday, but this time for free." He wanted to push them beyond the conventional thinking of trading time for money. He wanted their brains to start looking for opportunities to create money, not just earn it. The boys were confused but intrigued. Working for nothing seemed kind of crazy, but we trusted there was a reason behind it. So, we agreed. We went back to the store, not as employees but as observers, trying to spot something everyone else was missing. With their minds no longer focused on the tiny wage, they began to see the store differently. One day they saw the store manager tearing the front covers off old comic books that hadn't sold. I asked the manager if we could have the old coverless comic books. She just shrugged and said yes. Suddenly we had a product, and it hadn't cost us a single cent. Their first business was born in the corner of Mike's basement. We opened a comic book library. Other kids loved comics but couldn't always afford to buy them. For just 10 cents, kids could come in and read as many comics as they wanted for 2 hours. It was a great deal. The boys were no longer working for money. They had created an asset, the comic book library, that was now working for them. Their business was a huge success. They even hired Mike's sister to run the library, paying her $1 a week, and still had plenty of profit left over. You have created a business. You have created something that generates income without you having to be there. You have made money work for you. This experience was more valuable than any college degree in business. It was a real-world lesson in seeing value where others saw trash and in creating a system that produced wealth. The differences between Robert's two fathers were not just in their words. They were visible in their homes and their lifestyles. Visiting each house was like stepping into a different reality, each one a physical manifestation of their financial philosophies. Our home is modest, but it's filled with books, awards, and love. Still, the mortgage and upkeep are tough. It's our greatest asset, but also our biggest financial burden. Life at my dad's house was all about saving, turning off lights, planning vacations on a tight budget. I heard we can't afford that a lot. Robert saw his father, a brilliant and hardworking man, constantly stressed about making ends meet. His life was responsible, but it lacked financial freedom. He was a captive of his job and his bills, living a life that was safe but also confined by the financial decisions he had made years ago. My home? It's not just a place to live. It's a symbol of what's possible. Here, we talk about creating wealth, not just paying bills. The atmosphere in Rich Dad's home was one of freedom. Money was not a taboo subject or a source of anxiety. It was a topic of education and empowerment. He spent his money on things that brought him joy and on assets that would generate even more income. Seeing these two homes, these two lives, side by side, was the most powerful lesson of all. I could see the results of two different mindsets right in front of me. As Robert grew from a boy into a young man, he stood at a fundamental fork in the road. He had received a priceless education from two fathers who both loved him dearly. One taught me the value of being a good student and a loyal employee. The other taught me the value of being a student of money and a business owner. The choice was not about rejecting one father for the other. It was about choosing a philosophy, a mindset that would guide his own financial journey. I respected the hard work and integrity of my poor dad, but I couldn't ignore the results I saw, a life of constant financial struggle. He chose the path of his rich dad. It was not the easier path. It was a path of risk, of continuous learning, and of challenging the status quo. It required him to unlearn many of the conventional ideas about money that society and his own beloved father had taught him. I decided that I did not want to spend my life working for money. I wanted to learn how to make money work for me. I wanted to build assets that would provide an income stream, even if I didn't have a traditional job. I wanted the freedom I saw in Rich Dad's life, the freedom of time, of choice, and of opportunity. This choice was not about a desire for fancy cars or big houses. It was about a desire for control over his own life. It was about having the power to make his own decisions, to pursue his passions without being limited by the need for a paycheck. I realized that true success isn't measured by the size of your salary, but by the strength of your assets. Financial freedom, I learned, is the ultimate goal. It's the ability to live the life you want without money being the deciding factor. That realization became my guiding star, the principle that would shape all my future endeavors. In the end, Robert's story is a message of hope and empowerment. It teaches us that our financial destiny is not determined by how much we earn, but by how we think. The most important lesson from his two fathers was this: your greatest asset is your mind. By investing in your financial education, by learning the language of money, and by daring to think differently, you can choose your own path. You can break free from the rat race. You can build a life of abundance and purpose. It all begins with a choice, a commitment to learn, and the belief that you have the power to create your own future.